Welcome to the Anomaly Project, the show that looks at all aspects of the paranormal and anomalous world. I'm Marcus Lowth, and with me, as he is every week, is a legend that is Steve Mera. Now, Steve, this week our viewers have got like bang for their buck. We've got two guests with us this evening.
I know, yeah, they
Keeping
really
them
are
really
going to
well.
they really spoiled. They get spoiled, won't they? You know, but of course,
Absolutely.
there's a lot to cover as well, which is interesting. And it's not just about their experiences of these two friends of mine, but it's also their journey, and they've been busy. Books, documentaries, all sorts of different things. And I would say the creativity seems to have come out, which is an interesting point, which I'll be covering actually, because I know a number of people which are twins, you could say, have had profound experiences, but all of them, one thing I've noticed, creativity is off the scale. And I thought, that is really, I'll get to that. But yes, it's going to be an interesting show and a great opportunity to have Philip and Ronald together, in the same room as well.
Well,
Thank you.
As Steve says, yeah, we're this evening we're speaking to experiencers, researchers, and investigators, authors, twin brothers, which will come up later, I'm sure. Philip and Ronald Kinsella. Guys, thank you for joining us. How are you doing, first of all?
Well, we're doing both very well. We're still on this side of life, thankfully. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there you have it. But lovely to connect with the wonderful Steve and you, Marcus, as well.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. It's an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Look, I think the best thing is to just to delve right in. Now, like Steve says, a lot to cover. I think the best place to start, though, would be with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys had a shared experience when you were a lot younger, when you were young boys. Could you tell me a little bit about that, basically?
Yes. Well, I mean, we were young. We've been staying with our maternal grandmother. Our grandparents lived in Felton, Middlesex, and they had a very large house. And it was on, I think we agreed it was a summer's evening. I mean, as kids, we didn't have a diary and
Yeah.
dotted or documented because people say, I want proof, I want evidence. I mean, for goodness sake, we were kids.
Yeah.
But there was,
We were 13.
we were 13, and there was an appearance of this, what we can only describe as we thought, first of all, had been a balloon, but it wasn't. And it was about the size of a football. It was in broad daylight and it was silver. And it just came over with it on a direct trajectory course to where we were. And it then hung over our grandmother's head. And we were so stunned. Of course, UFO did not come into our minds because
Never.
we always assumed a UFO was a big thing,
Right.
but this thing was small. But as it hung there, we could see the reflection of the tree through its silver
Mm.
makeup. There was no markings, no lights, nothing on it. It was just a perfect sphere. And when we asked our grandmother what it was, and she said, "Oh, look, the fairies have come to take a closer look at us." And I think she was trying to allay our fears. But we watched as this thing then went up to the second floor bedroom windows, then the third floor, and it went over the top of the house. And we ran into the house because they had a winding staircase in the big hall. So we ran up there and then to the front of my grandparents' room. We saw it going very fast. So that was the real beginning or acknowledgement
Mm.
of high strangeness.
And that was just like a summer's day. You're
Yeah.
outside. You both saw this. Did your grandmother see this as well?
Oh yes, yes, absolutely. And I remembered that at night we had the top room, and of course where the galleyed landing was, it went straight down to the hall. And my grandmother had a telephone desk there, and of course she would do her talking there, and she'd be talking to someone on the phone. We think it was our Auntie Betty, her daughter, about this strange occurrence.
Right, right. I mean, of course, it gives some credence to a lot of things actually more in more common times, more recent times of spheres. Because
Hmm.
back then, it wasn't, you're right. I mean, there wasn't really much on spheres. We had structured crafts and flying saucer type things and things like that, but not many spheres. But you see a lot more of that in more recent times. And of course, some of them I believe might be a little bit hokey, some of them
Yeah.
aren't. Because I've had a lot of different pieces of footage, and I'll be honest with you, I can't identify some of these things, or even how they would actually propulse themselves around, move around. So it's interesting that it started when you're 13 and it started with a sphere,
Yeah,
and I
it's
think that's probably unique to any of the experiences that people have reported when their initial experience. It's usually some form of craft like a UFO or something structured, or it's something which is some type of being, maybe it turned up in the rooms, or balls of light. So I think it's quite unique when you say, it was the initial experience was a sphere. And how long was it until? I mean, you say that's his initiated experience in a sense of speaking. I was 7, you were 13, but it's interesting that these initiated experiences seem to be the first of others to come. Would you
Can
agree
I
with that?
just
Yeah, and
interject
others
before
that
you answer that, guys? You mentioned you were 13. What date would have this been? What year? What are we talking?
1982.
1982. Okay,
82.
sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt there. Sorry,
and
guys.
just to
Blimey.
reiterate there very quickly, this then had an adverse effect with future events, and then of course a knock-on effects with past memories that may have indicated some form of contact. But of course, none of this can be proven. It's theoretical.
Yeah, it was. I had a good look at it. It didn't make any sound. The size of a football. It was silver, although today we use the word titanium, some kind of
Yes.
reflective. Didn't make any noise, but I had a good look at it. Had no knot underneath it, no markings, no details. It appeared soiled because of the reflection of the world about it. I mean, someone actually asked us, when it appeared, did the insects go quiet? Well, we wouldn't know. We were not wise.
No, you don't. You
I would
don't.
never remember.
I was asked that as well. So I don't know. It's only when you become a researcher and you look back and you think, yeah, okay, but I can't recall it. And those things are interesting. But no seams, no rivets, no markings. It was just like an aluminum or stainless steel type reflective ball,
Yes.
and the size of a football as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating. So, was this the first experience you believe you have, or because I know that you've had possible recall of events as
Yes.
time's gone on. Does any of those precede or be prior to that incident, or was that you believe that is your very first experience?
That was, I believe, our very first experience, namely because it happened on a very conscious level where we were awake and we were aware. There was no suppression of memories or, hidden memories, that type of thing. So this was the first time that we had this level of high strangeness with what we would call an unidentified object.
Yeah.
It's only afterwards. I don't
Mm.
know whether this thing had caused it or what had happened, but it was only afterwards that we recalled that something may have happened to us when we were perhaps as young as 4. Something in a garden we saw.
Bignell House.
It cannot. We've got. It's so weak.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote about it, called The Bug at Bignell, but it's still so obscure. But something did happen, but we cannot be certain. But certainly the sphere,
Yeah.
that was the main one because it's brazenly there. And when it was hovering there, I had the distinct impression, I remembered I had the distinct impression it was watching us. So I referred to it as later on as the electronic eye, or some kind of camera.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So do you think that could have been like some kind of, whatever the intelligence was behind it, some kind of drone? Do you think that literally, or
Well, yeah, I mean, we had a history teacher called Mr. Charles, and he lent us his entire volume of paranormal magazines one summer, and we went through them, and there was some references in there. This is after the event.
Yeah.
So there was some reference, and this is where I started my UFO project on a Saturday morning, going down to the library dedicated. It was part Loch Ness Monster, and it was part because there was very few books out there at the time in the library. Roswell was one of them, and I'd go away and do projects. But one of the things was that Mr. Charles lent us these magazines. There was references to these Foo Fighters.
That's right.
And I kind of thought, well, they're still not kind of UFO-y put into that like media connection. But I thought it did cross my mind quite curiously as to whether there was something with this or there was some connection with that.
Yeah, Foo Fighters, yeah. I mean, they were spherical though, weren't they? It's supposed to be.
Yes.
But I've got varied photographs of some of those Foo Fighters from the 1940s, and it would seem that sometimes they would illuminate in light, so all you'd see was a round ball of light, and sometimes it's as if like somebody had just switched the light off and what you saw was a dark sphere. So you've got kind of some which are dark, some which are lit up, But according to some of the details, it seemed like they were able to change. In other words, they surround themselves in light, and then sometimes it just disappears, and you'd see like a dark sphere against the daylight of the sky. Very interesting, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we were near an airport, Heathrow Airport. We used to see the planes coming in, and our grandfather used to work for KLM, and we saw the Concorde. We were fascinated with air flight, with aircraft,
Yeah.
always have been. But there was no technology that we're aware of that was able to administer this type of mechanism. It was very strange. It was eerie.
The sphere
No,
thing's really interesting because there's loads of sightings of orbs as well. And like you say, the solid 1 minute, and then there's loads of reports of these things passing through walls and things of that nature. So it is interesting that you guys, had an encounter with this thing back before this was quite widely publicized. You mentioned it was the first of several. So how long was it before something else happened? And what was that?
Well, Ronnie had his abduction that year.
You see,
Okay.
even then, I wouldn't have called it abduction because I was ignorant of the facts, and even then, I wouldn't have called them aliens. I still don't think they were, but I had the winter of 1982 after this sphere. I don't know whether they're connected because at the time you're all over the place. It's only later on when you become wiser that you can kind of connect the dots. Whether they were surveying their goods or whatever, or subjects, I have no idea. But I was brief. It's very brief. It was one night I was taken up into something hanging in the sky. I went through the roof. This is what makes it absolutely ludicrous. And I was found to be seated in a chair, and there was these doctors ahead of me, basically men in armor. I couldn't see them, but they were humanoid. There were three ahead of me and one behind me. I couldn't see the one behind me. And in a nutshell, he was referring to that I required an operation. And I begged and pleaded with him no end of times. He knew my name.
right.
The first thing he said was, "We are going to perform an operation on you, Ronald." He knew my name. No one calls me Ronald, apart from when teachers or when family members are angry, or my grandfather. So
Yeah.
it was authority. It's later on I worked this all out, but they put me under and they spat me out of the thing, and I dropped down, and they presented, I gather, because I thought they were separate, this godforsaken hologram of this Cheshire Cat's head grinning down at me. It was light, some kind of light. And that was it. I was horrified by it for years. But I kept wondering if the second incident with the holographic head of the Cheshire Cat beaming down at me, grinning with all these teeth, was perhaps an insurance policy on their behalf, so that if I do go and see a psychologist, they'll say, "Well, hang on a minute, you're just confused. This is Alice in Wonderland. You just is a bad dream."
Steve,
I don't know.
Before you give your opinion on this, can I just ask you on this encounter? I've read multiple alien abduction, cases. I'm sure you have. Can you recall actually entering the craft, or were you floating towards it 1 minute and then you just woke up inside it?
That's right. I woke up inside it, but I remembered being ejected was much more clearer to me, and I've made a point of this, much clearer to me dropping, because I could feel this static charge, and they were very gentle. They weren't nasty. They were just forceful. They dropped me onto the bed. I could feel the bump of the mattress. That was awful. And it dissipated all this stuff, all this feeling. And then he appeared, a flicker of light. But no, I do not recall actually entering it. I just appeared in there. So I'll answer honestly and as correctly as I can.
What are your thoughts on that? Because some researchers have suggested that whatever this intelligence is, whether it's aliens or whatever entity, that they intentionally incapacitate because the entering the craft is so perhaps horrific. I mean, what are your thoughts, of why that it might be?
I don't know, but I will say, what I will say is I've wondered, if they can anesthetize me prior to an alleged operation, as they did, they put me under, why on earth couldn't they do that before I was taken? It would make the whole process so much simpler. There'll be no memory of it. But obviously, I gather they want you to see them, or they're incapable of actually doing that. I don't know, Marcus, I don't know. But it's an interesting point, isn't it? But I answer honestly, and that's what happened. So
yeah, it starts, as time's gone on, and we talk about the abduction phenomena. I came across it late 80s first. It wasn't very well known in the early. I mean, I knew you had your experience in 82. My first investigation was 83. That's showing my age, isn't it? But it just wasn't known much till latter 80s, more so right through the 90s, and of course X-Files didn't help, because everybody was, I've been abducted, but, we went through this transition of people are being physically taken. By the time we get to 2000, about 2008, 2009, some research came forward to suggest that we are, in a sense, separated in a spiritual sense, and people
Yes.
are spiritually taken. This is why they might be able to pass through ceilings and walls. Do you know where we are now? We are now in the world of metaphysics. We now know that non-human intelligences, through communications with these things, have demonstrated to us at the Lawrence Livermore laboratories as well in America, that they can take something physical from our environment and make it non-physical. In other words, you'll see it, it casts shadow, you bounce light off it, but you will not pick it up, because they've done something. There's a transition that they've applied to demonstrate they have the capabilities of metaphysical actions. Now, when we talk about alien abduction phenomena, we talk about, well, sometimes these beings came through the wall and then picked me up or touched me. And you think, well, hang on, it's physical or non-physical?
Yeah.
What if it's both? What if this phenomena seemingly could take individuals and just basically switching your metaphysicality
Yes.
to something which is you won't know, but you would, to non-physical, to be able to take you through walls, to manipulate you through the ceilings or whatever, but then transition you back to physicality to have an operation of some sort or something like that. So, if they can do this with items, can they do it with biological things? Well, we do know that, when we talk about paranormal things, apports are sometimes biological, such as plants, which apport from one place to another. So biological things and living organisms don't seem to be a big issue. But just wondering, now we're into this area now, is there a possibility, do you think, that there could be a something there that we're getting confused? It's black or white and we can't see the grey, excuse the pun,
Yes.
in the middle. But it's like, well, it's not physical and it's not spiritual. It is both. And they can
Yes.
manipulate that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, when I had
Interesting.
my abduction, which was 7 years after Ronnie's in 1989, and we're 7 minutes apart, I'm just saying, I don't think the so-called extraterrestrials are interested in how far in years or numbers. But after my traumatic experience in 1989, in the winter of 1989, I spent a long time thinking about this, how I was able to pass through solid matter. And it was in 1996 that I had my first ever and only download. What I mean by that is that this revelation came into my mind. It was about the Greys. It also incorporated the abduction program as well as the inherent dangers of cloning and the spirit. And I then went home. I remember jotting it all down at work, went home, banged out an article and submitted it to Alien Encounters magazine
Yes,
that
remember
published
that.
it. Yeah, you remember that in 1996, called Spirits in the Material World. So I agree with you. We can't prove anything because we only deal with theoretical models. But I will agree with you because in this understanding with near-death experience, it seems to mirror, or it did then at that point, the abduction phenomena, but they weren't connected. I don't believe they were connected on that level, but I believe that these entities, these beings, these intelligences are able to forcibly remove the real essence of you and bring it into their vibrational reality, so interaction can then be made. And even though, the person that's been abducted physically is still breathing, their essence has been removed, there's still a connection. So whatever they do to the astral etheric body will inevitably affect the physical one.
I do believe that. Yeah, I think the psychological aspect overrules all physical
Oh, yes.
aspects. I mean, it is plenty of evidence to support that. Even when we've had people under hypnosis, and we put a 2 pence piece on their arm and tell them it's hot, they'll blister. And you think, well, how does the physiological body blister? Because it wasn't hot. But it's
Yeah.
because the idea was put in there psychologically that the physiological action took place. And we know that from, stigmata. And we now
Yes.
know that stigmata's professional name is self-induced spontaneous physical marking, SISPM, because we know that, with devout belief, you can cause physical wounds. But at the same time, you can also heal. This is interesting. It doesn't just go one way; it swings both ways. This gate, so you get some people which are tremendous healers, and that's basically through this belief system. So this belief system overrules. So the psyche overrules the physiological. And when we've asked questions, because we've asked that questions many times, and the problem is you never know if you're going to get a straight answer. It's a bit like NASA, really. Sometimes you get cryptid answers. When we ask questions and we say, well, as an example, do we go to heaven when we pass, when we die? And the response is for those that make it. It's like, what the hell does that mean? He's like got 100 more questions. What came first? The human physiological aspect of a human being or spirit? And spirit precedes, they say. Spirit always precedes the physicality. So you think to yourself, okay, so what's the most fundamental? Maybe it's not the physical self, might be the psychological self. So it's hard to know in our minds and where this memory is held, and we don't really know where memory lies, to be honest with you. But it's made up of information that we can't deter. Were we physical at the time, or were we none, or were we both?
And chicken and the egg, isn't it?
It really is a problematics, and this is where we're going now. And as time's gone on, there's a lot of people looking at these older cases of alien abduction and thinking, hang on a second, there are aspects of this which was ignored. And the fact it was ignored because they wanted to, that narrative at the time, that belief was everything is physical. Everybody's physically taken, physical things happen to them. And that's, in a sense, yes, it does. That's true. But is the process of having those things done with both metaphysical actions, just as UFOs seem to be metaphysical and the beings seem to be metaphysical. So the problem is trying to wrap our heads around this, get out of this black and white situation.
As a wonderful researcher as yourselves, and the phenomena eludes our intelligence because it morphs, it changes. And this is interesting. And this is something that I am no expert in this. I have no answers. All we have are theoretical models. But it does appear to me and does appear to other researchers that the phenomenon morphs, it changes, and it's very clever. And it really riles me when people say, oh, they're here to save us and they've got information. Where is the information? Where is it?
I have to say that what you've suggested, and you're quite right, you and Mark is probably on the same page as us on it, where you have actually mentioned, haven't you, that I wondered why they were not the famous Greys. But if you think back at the time of 1982, they weren't so popular. So what you've suggested, both of you, is that this force or this is able, if they can do that, they can do that to themselves or give the illusion of appearing to be what's in vogue or perhaps what's more acceptable to be just on the fringe of reality. I think you would both agree with that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, I want to get into the Greys and the reptilians and the different masks in a minute, but if we could just, Philip, could you just maybe detail, your alien abduction encounter, and also, if you can, the download you experienced several years later, because I think that'd be interesting to listen to.
Okay, I'll give a very quick crash course. To me, it's a memory that I was not induced through hypnosis or regression. I remembered all the events. We are hard to regress or hypnotize in any case. I come back from work, winter's night, excuse me, in 1989. My brother and my sister were in the house with our dog. We lived in a cul-de-sac in a small village called Marston Mortain. I got the train home, so it would have been roughly around about 20 past 7. It was dark. My mum was out at work. I walked through the door. The doors were glass, all of them. We had quite a large house there. Walked through to the kitchen. So the kitchen door's open, so it leads out to the hall and looks out to the driveway. I didn't drive at this point. And I lay back against the kitchen cabinets and, just chilling. My sister was to my far left. Ronnie was in the dining area ahead of me, so he didn't have line of sight towards the hall. And the dog was in front of me, in front of the breakfast bar. So I'm leaning back and we're just talking, and then the atmosphere starts to change. It becomes electrified, and something started to happen with our dog, Benji, who started to react to this. He was growling, and his attention was focused to the front of the door in the hallway, to the door to the house. And all of a sudden, this energy started to increase, and my brother, who was standing in front of me, then froze, and then he lifted his head up to the ceiling, and he said, and these were his exact words, "There's going to be an earthquake, or Grandma's going to die." Well, I thought,
I just had a sense of dread.
Yeah, but
Just dread.
he froze, and I was like, "What? What is he talking about? There's no earthquake, and our grandmother is still very much alive, or she was at that point." And then the dog became frantic. I don't know whether or not my sister, because she remembers the event, she can't remember what happened. And then there was this light that came up from the driveway because the light was coming towards the front of the frosted glass windows. And I thought that our mother had returned back from work early from a night shift. And then incredibly, the glass, this is embarrassing because the glass got brighter and brighter with this white light. It was like a little bit of a creamy white light. I am
Mm.
colorblind, but I do know what white is. And
Yeah.
but the door starts to like some jelly. It was like getting faster and faster, and the dog starts to go mad. And then this being, it was about 3 foot tall, very diminutive, clad entirely in black, and it had what I assume was a motorcycle helmet on its head that may indicative that the whatever it was had a larger cranium, and it just walked through this jellified opening of the door, and then bang, it all went back to normal, and it shot through and straight towards what was then mine and my brother's bedroom and study. There was a downstairs shower room down there as well too, because it was we didn't have the rooms upstairs. The other family members did, but so I'm shocked. I snap out of it, and I yell, "There's an intruder in the house." And then this thing shot past the corner to in the hall to the left. It shot past across the hall, no sound up the stairs. And I yelled or I screamed, "There's an intruder in the house." And I picked up a knife from the drawer and we went looking for it. We couldn't find it. I broke down and couldn't work it out. In the early hours of that morning, I woke up finding myself on my back with my head facing the kitchen door, the glass doors, and the same position of where this thing came through, I think roughly 3 feet off the floor. And I was then slowly, there were no beings around me. I was slowly being pulled forward, and I'm awake and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And I know that I'm being forcibly moved or pulled. I can't control myself. I am frozen, but I have an awareness of consciousness. So
Mm.
I'm pulled through the door and I'm thinking that's impossible. How am I able to get through solid matter? That's impossible. As I'm being pulled through to the kitchen door, I can see the dog. It must be very late because the dog's in his corner in the kitchen diner area and he hasn't clocked me. And then I'm being pulled then around and then forward to the other end of the kitchen doors that leads out to the conservatory, then out into the conservatory. We had a very large garden with a pond and a patio, and we had an aviary to the end. And I looked up as I was coming out, and I was arched upwards into a standing position because I was laying down and being pulled up. And I could see all these UFOs, and I thought there were all lights coming through the sky. And I thought, well, they're real. What's the problem? I was like, they're here. There's no big deal about it. But there was one object that wasn't moving. It was a large spherical object, very big, and it just hung there. And it was like a rustic kind of metal type quality to it. But
Mm.
as soon there were no lights on it, and as soon as I clocked it, I felt myself being pulled towards it. And a good point there, Marcus, because when I came faster and faster, my stomach, it's like being on a roller coaster, you're going to drop, but this was upwards. And then I don't remember. I just blanked out as soon as I came towards it. That was it. The next part is embarrassing. I found myself in a uh, medical room, and I would call a medical room. It was quite dark. There was some light directly to my front left, where there was an opening, some light there. I was strapped to a bed. I was naked. My legs were strapped. My arms were strapped, and I could move my head, and it was hot. And I could look at I remembered the fixtures. They look like they're molded into the floor, but I'm confused. I don't know where I am because I can't move. And there are two things that happen simultaneously. When I turned to my right, there were three huge, powerful, muscular reptilians. And it was so horrific because I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. And they had this kind of thick, it was hot where I was, like a sauna. They
Mm.
had kind of like a slight mist around them, and they were moving side to side like a strange gait. But the moment I clocked them, I realized there was something else that was occurring. There was something that I could feel within my lower abdominal that had been placed into the lower part. And I could feel it in the stomach or lower stomach region, perhaps lower. And that was it. I just screamed because I thought, well, I don't understand where I am, what's happened to me. And these things, they call them reptilians. Well, let me tell you, The sight of them was so horrific. There was no empathy. There was no love. I was just a piece of meat. Anyway, as I'm yelling and I'm struggling to get out, um, there is this. It was a cream-colored grey that came from that opening ahead of me and directly to the left where that light was. So there was an opening there. I'll tell you in a moment. And it came forward. When I looked, these guys had gone, and the thing was being retracted. I was ordered um, to dress when the releases were let go. I can't remember how they disappeared or they just released. I don't know. All I wanted to do was get out. So I was ordered to dress. My clothes were on the floor. My bed gear was on the floor. I dressed. I remember dressing, and I was to follow it where it wanted me to go. And it was through this opening to your left where the light was. There was just an opening with light. We came to a corridor. It was very bright, and we came to what I thought was a wall. And I'm like, this is crazy. I don't want to be here. I want to get off. So the grey looks at me, and then I had the image in my head of a huge tree. I don't know what that meant. And then the opening, such as it was, opened. So this thing was a door that just opened, and I could see ourselves at a height from the village, not far from my house. When I looked out, it was still dark, but becoming morning-ish, but it was still dark. And there was a smaller sphere. Check this crazy story out, right? There was a small sphere hanging by our conservatory, and I thought, well, there's another one there. What am I doing here? So the grey orders me to leave. I get upset. Heights are not my thing. And I felt this push. And then as I'm floating, there are another two greys, one on my right, one on my left. I'm ordered not to look at them. And I'm thinking that's really odd because I've already seen one of them on there, as well as those other three things that were reptilian. As I'm coming down to the ground, this is the interesting part. I'm not to look behind, and there is another grey. This is the last part in front of me. And this was truly horrific because this grey was uniformed. It was smart. It seemed to be roughly about maybe 4.5 feet tall. It wore a one-piece uniform, a khaki uniform. It had knee-length boots. It had this pointed hat on its head that seemed to come round quite smartly. Its face was narrow. His eyes were slits, but it seemed more I don't know how to explain it. A little bit more different from those. It was more human-y, but it was still alien.
You said it was like plastic.
Yeah, it was like animated plastic. But he had his arms folded and he was looking at me really angrily. And I wanted to punch him. I wanted to hit him, but I couldn't move. So I just thought I kind of recognized him from somewhere, but I couldn't think where. And I still can't. Anyway, I thought, you're angry with me. I'm going to ask you a question and you're going to answer it. How the hell am I able to get through solid matter? And I knew that if he answered it, I could tell people the reality of this. Well, anyway, as soon as I communicated or spoke, it's like speaking, he looked shocked. And then he started to move his head up very slowly to the underside of that craft. And then this electronic rasping voice, like a voice synthesizer from a Cheetah ZX81, came from its mouth. It was all garbled. And then I saw him then with my head towards the house so I could see him there frozen. And then I came through the glass very quickly, through to the conservatory, through to the kitchen, through to the hall, and then bang, back in my body. That's when I woke up with a nosebleed and I had to sort myself out. And just very quickly, my brother found marks behind my right ear, triangular mark. I had profuse nosebleeds to the right nostril that they were going to cauterize. It stopped after 2 years. Had marks on my right arm, and I couldn't walk properly. But another researcher, Pierce back, said that what I call now Noddy, that last grey, I have no idea what this is all about. What he did was he was mimicking what my brother had done earlier that night, where my brother froze, looked up, and then came out with his garbled message, and he was mimicking that. So you tell me, I have got no idea.
That's so profound. These experiences are so profound. They never, they were never two the same. To be honest with you, they're so profound and out there. And I used to think, like I know you guys like computer games, and when I imagine you playing like one of those fighting, ones like Mortal Kombat and stuff, you can spin it and flick through all the different characters. Who am I going to be?
Yes.
Sometimes I think, well, the source is doing that. I'm just going to go and click. Oh yeah, let me just click this, click that, and this is what you'll experience. Because if you do the studies, you'll find that there are multiple thousands of these entities, variations,
Yes.
multiple thousands. You know, we're not talking 5, 6, 7, or 8 of these, multiple thousands throughout history, of all shapes, all sizes, some looking so strange and profound, some looking robotic, some looking like you can't really identify some of these things. If we were to assume the narrative that, okay, well, you know, they come from a planet, well, there's multiple thousands of planets that these things are coming from. But what we would expect, I would have thought, is variation. And we don't seem to have that. Only in how it perceived or how it wants to be perceived is the variation. Everything else is stereotypical. The crafts, the interactions, the things they do, the things they say, you know. And you think to yourself, well, you know what? It's even hard now to get people around the world that live on planet Earth to act the same, you know. And if you really want to see something truly alien, you just go to the bottom of the North Sea because the environment is so different. And you think, well,
Yeah.
if these planets, so their environments must be massively different. But why are they all same? Why are they mostly bipedal? 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, and so on,
Mm.
and kind of do the same thing. So
Yeah.
it's like there's a blueprint for the phenomena,
Yeah.
Mm.
but variations of it. Now, what's interesting is to me is that with your experience, were you aware of Noddy as in the TV show Noddy at the time? And the other experience where you, the Cheshire Cat face, was had you already seen Alice in Wonderland? I'm wondering if these things are being taken from us and being produced for us.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had mentioned that in my book. I think it was Digital Demon, where I had
Mm,
seen it, yes. But this one's their version
their
put
version.
Lewis Carroll's to shame. So all the,
Really?
yeah, but I must make it quite clear that my treatment by the doctors was extremely um, tame.
Mm,
Although it was horrifying for me. I mean, for God's sake, after it, I was propping books against the door. The door. It
Mm.
took me up. I was propping books against the door every
And
night,
on your back.
frightened of turning a light on. But in comparison to his, mine was rather tame. They were a little bit more dignified.
Yeah, I
mm,
think, and to finish off Marcus and Steve in terms of the experience,
Yeah.
you know, people call it alien abduction. You know, I'm not going to put it in a bracket. I'm not going to say that's what it was. It could have been
No.
some other form of abduction on a different level. But I kept thinking I couldn't leave it alone. I wanted to, and you know, I was shamed because I wanted, you know, telling people what happened and expecting people to understand even to the point where a publisher in later years refused to put that piece in there about the abduction
yes.
because he couldn't make a correlation between reptilians and greys, but thankfully had been published in a magazine beforehand to give me some weight of you
Yeah.
know honesty there that that's what happened, and I didn't just fill that gap in.
Hmm.
But I kept thinking, how did they do it? And I wanted the answer from him. It was desperate for me, and he wouldn't give it. And then, of course, I think perhaps it's possible that part of my mind kept thinking about this, and all of a sudden, bang, something gave and it came in. I don't think I was given it from the Greys. I don't think the reptilians, or whatever you want to call them, or Noddy character. I still wanted to hit him real hard.
Mm.
And I still do to pay back. But
Yeah.
that's why I then had this passion, this drive to find the truth, because I thought the contact experience was very different. I didn't think that you would be taken through walls or doors, even rather doors or walls to the cross. I didn't see any of that, but that's what happened. And I'm thinking, hang on, they've got this wrong, unless, of course, I'm deluded.
There were telling signs as well later on, much later, when I look back at this phenomena, this incident that occurred with me. I refer to them as the doctors. I don't know what they were. I don't even think they were alien, but
Mhm.
it happened. As I reiterated before, the Britishness of his voice, my name, and also authority. So, because I
Authority.
was frightened of policemen, I was you respected them. Any kind of authority, I was compliant to. Absolutely, you bet your bottom dollar, 100%. So they had me snared because of his voice was commanding. He wasn't nasty,
Mm.
but he was commanding, and
Mm.
it will be done. Even though any amount of begging and pleading and crying, it didn't do a thing. They weren't unkind. So the telling stars, as you stated before, Stephen yourself, you mentioned about the guises, the changes, the adapting. Well, this certainly adapted to that, but at the time I wouldn't have known. I was
No, you wouldn't.
a young teenager, terrified, and I would answer to authority, even though I didn't like it. They were going to do what they want. I didn't know where the hell I was, but it was authority.
Guys,
Yeah, I
can I
mean,
just get
it's
your
just
thoughts
around.
before we move on? You mentioned about Philip. You mentioned there you were told not to look. You were told not to look at these entities.
Yes.
You know, there's accounts in the ancient world who say the gods instructed the subjects: you mustn't look at us, you mustn't see our true form, you mustn't depict us in our true form. Do you think there's any kind of connection to those? What, you know, very well could be legend and the encounters that you've experienced. And also, do you recall anything of the download of how it actually, you know, do you recall anything that you were told from that download in 1996?
Yeah, firstly, I think that we're dealing with an ancient force. I think we're dealing with something that goes back far, far, way before perhaps even the creation of the hominid or this new model of what we call human. You know, I know that Steve is his work and respected research, and of course you as well, Marcus, because we're all important. Everyone's looking for those answers. So I believe that the reptilian, or at least the way that we see it, the archons, the Anunnaki, who knows, you know, they could still very much be here to this day. And there's this waging war about the spirit. I think there's a lot more involved in this. So this is why the system will not reveal the truth to the public anytime soon. The download, it was almost like a knowing. There was no words. It's really hard to explain. But you know, if you've ever had a flash of insight when something's just come to your mind, it's like, you know, but within that flash of insight, it may come through as imagery linked with sensations which create that language. The same with clairvoyance. I mean, it's interesting how I went, and I'm not going to go into it, but with the psychic component, trying to look at the reality of communication and how it's done through mental and emotional stimuli that creates the language. So I remembered having this amazing euphoric moment. I just had it. It was just all there. And it was about the greys, about lost entities that clone themselves, the spirits lost. They're after that through the hybridization program. It was going on about the dangers that we were as a species going through, transhumanism, cloning, destroying the spirit or the spark of divinity. And so I remembered at work, I grabbed a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. I can't remember. I'm sorry there, pencil or pen. It was one or the other. I wrote something down and I got it all down quick and I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't wait to get home and I punched this all out. Another researcher did try to stop me from having this published. One who knows all about it, because they were taking forefront of this magazine at the time with lots of their articles. I thought that was damn rude, but they said, no, we want to print it. And I was very honored. You know, a little bit of their little tiny something. So that was a profound experience, but not to be repeated in terms of so-called downloads. Not yet, anyway.
Downloads, they've been going on for a long time, back into ancient times. But it was recognized as three different layers of this. I mean, it was, you would have dream information, or consciously being awake and downloaded information, or even communication. There are three methods of delivering information via what these things are. But it was recognized first off in 1928, as it should be, as a external force applying information or giving information out. And then he utilized it through 1936, and it got used in all the various different programs that had been used over the years, people which were obtaining information through downloaded experiences, people which would make a change in the world, inventors, rocket engineers, all sorts of different, hundreds of people. It's been kept quiet over the years, but people do have these down. I've never had a download experience, but I know people who have, and it's one of those where, okay, so the information is supposed to be valuable. So what would you take from that then as your valuable piece of information about about transhumanism, about all the, not tampering? What would you say is the thing of the pinnacle thing there, that, because there always usually are downloaded experiences that it's got some very significant bearing on future events?
I think that you mentioned the 20s and that with Nikola Tesla and all that, we can consider that fact. for some of the darker aspects. But I wonder if the first practice of this force was to dispatch messages physically that crashed. And because it was scooped up and silenced, they found another way of gaining this kind of technique of trying to spread disinformation, whatever it is they're giving to people, a new means, a new thought process. I don't know. That's interesting what you just stated there, Steve, because of course, being a leader, you both leading researchers, you come up with this wonderful, information. But I am, Philip, always eager to accept any kind of answer or solution. We are not gripped by one. We are not tunnel visioned. We are open to everything. So I think that helps. And you are too. You both are too. That helps because you would accept any kind of or adopt any kind of new idea because we don't know, but some are stronger than others. But yes, what you just stated was very interesting. Yeah. I mean, I've never had a download myself.
No.
Ever.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, I do believe in these UFO crashes. My argument is that the phenomena, it's rather like the film The Thing, where it built itself up through the composition of material and biological matter. And it's interesting how if we take Roswell, and you know what, you're never going to please everyone. There's people that disagree and people that do agree. Whatever it was unusual and exotic. It must have been. And if it's true to believe, as Ronnie has said, and it's interesting to speculate that we had, or the army at that time had been gifted with technology that was just in reach of where we had been at that point, maybe just in reach. And of course, the question is, this force, this intelligence, does it have our best interests at heart? I don't know, because the way I'm seeing it is that there is an agenda that we are seeing now from the puppets that are in control. They're just puppets, that's all they are. They're masters. I don't think we've seen their real faces, whoever in control are directing, and it's all to do with the human and bringing the human down. Because I kept thinking to myself, why are we so badly treated? Why is this system doing this to us and that to us? Why are they subjugating our brilliance and our creative nature and our loving nature? So the way I'm seeing it is that with that download, and we, like you, are very practical, very grounded. I won't add or subtract, but what I do remember, it was like a revelation. It was like a spiritual experience, like, oh my God, here it comes. And that's the only way I can explain it. Is it the truth? I don't know. It seemed to make sense to me at that point. So I don't know.
Guys, can I just get your thoughts? Because I think here would be a good time to actually ask this. We're talking about your experiences and downloads and different, shared and different encounters that you've both gone through, I suppose is the best way of putting it. Obviously, you're twin brothers. And I believe that you feel that is of quite importance to this. I mean, could you speak to me a little bit about that? Because I think I'm going to find this absolutely enthralling. So...
As twins, we used to have our own language when we were younger. We used to make sounds to communicate with one another.
Purely acoustic.
They're acoustic sounds to differentiate between certain characteristics of people. Of course, you can't get away with that today because you'll be locked up. But we had, and we were very creative. We wanted to be writers when we were about 6.
No, we didn't. We wanted to be actors first.
Yeah, but we were writers as well because we would get any bits of paper, the old fish and chip blank paper. We used to have that and create stories. So this creative part was always there with us. And with our, grandparents and our mom, they made sure that we were.
This is how far it went.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really unusual because I've never felt part of this world, even as a kid.
No.
I'm going to be honest with you. I found external emotion of people expressing themselves very alien to me, and I'm being very honest. So we hid away in our own little box, if you would put it that way. And we when we went to school, even at school, we weren't very close with the pupils because we were picked on being twins and oddities.
Yeah.
So what we did was we created these characters. We went home and had an old record player named vinyls. Our grandfather gave us a big chest. One of those chest units with a vinyl and a radio. It was all in one, with the needle that you propped on the record. And there was one record called Go With Ventures. It was called Escape. The group would Go With the Ventures. And there was a particular teacher that fascinated us. I guess you could say that she looked similar to Judge Judy. That's how we would put it now.
Miss
But
Horton.
we were fascinated with her. So being twins, we were very creative. So we had her for math, and she was a lovely teacher, very distinct. So we would go home, and unwittingly, she was feeding us fresh material on a daily basis when we saw her, because we'd come home and we'd actually impersonate her to the tune of this escape. You know, we'd arm her with a space rifle, and she would be in pursuit of these unruly pupils to this ridiculous tune. It's really weird how you wanted to escape, and people will then attribute that to imagination as to why we saw the Doctors and the Greys. They were not even any part of it.
No,
So
no.
we were quite creative.
No.
And I
mean-
used to go to school believing I was a robot. I had superhuman powers. Would you believe that? And people that will then say, oh, hang on a minute, just a minute. The twins are confused. I mean, they're creative. And this is what I really, really hate, because whenever you've had an experience, the press or whoever, you've got to be a blank canvas. You've got to have no creativity,
it's
no
ridiculous.
personality.
Yeah.
No.
Can I
I
just
know, I
ask
mean-
you, the point about creativity is really, really interesting, because
It
there are
is.
numerous creative people, you can call them famous people, who have had these experiences. And I've also found, like yourselves, that researchers into the paranormal UFOs, they do tend to be creative people, whether it's the musicians, whether they're artists, whether they like to write. So, you know, is that creativity? Because like you, I don't think that suggests that people are making things up. If anything, I think it shows that they're a little bit more open-minded and to these experiences. Do you think that creativity, do you think, you know,
Yes.
which one feeds the other, or, you know?
I think it's an anchor for this force, because if you're creative, certainly back in the time, they would latch onto you big time, because you could then be mistaken for imagining it. It's only a thought.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one
So I could see
possibility.
Steve's got some ideas there.
Yeah.
I
could
have,
see him
yeah.
got them.
I mean, from a psychological aspect, which I've studied, the whole process of creativeness, you know, comes from one side of the brain, but it is that side of the brain that shares spirituality. It's the same thing. It's the same side of the brain. I mean, we've got the science and the numbers on the other side, but now on the other side, we've got creativeness, the feeling, spirituality, all that sort of thing. So they do lie together, these things. Now, there is a difference between people who have a sighting, or they see something, or they've had some type of experience, between them and those which are part of the phenomenon. There is a difference. I would say for Philip and Ronnie, they're part of it, just as I've been part of it, and probably Marcus and many others. But there are also people that are on the outside of the greenhouse and can see through the window occasionally and see what's going on. Those aren't part of it, but they have experiences. There are people that have experiences, but there are people which is part of the experience, which is just their lives. You know, it's just like there are two distinct differences between these individuals. Creativity, absolutely. Twins, interestingly enough, I'm aware of 7 throughout my research. You know, the Hewins, there's the Allagash brothers, and there's a few different people. But if we take for an example that out there in the world over the last, say, 60, 80 years, if you've had twins and they've had experiences, how many of them have actually come forward? You know, you got to consider the further back in time, the less likely that information would have come out.
Yeah.
If you'd be lucky to say 5%, really. But, you know, that's 7 that I'm aware of, which, because they have come out and talked about it, how many aren't would be a high percentage. So there's probably a considerable amount of people or twins that have had experiences. I know certainly paranormal ones. That's very well documented. You know, rapport telepathy and all sorts of communications. You know, all sorts of different things. Yes, there's some good parapsychological research that backs that up over twins, and nobody's really been able to put the finger on it. But if science is interested, then why won't these guys be interested? Of course they'd be interested, you know, because everything from day one is shown that they've had an interest in human genome and human genetics.
Right. Yeah.
Right from day one. And, you know, all sorts of things. And you've been questioning about, you know, well, are we being upgraded? Is humanity being upgraded over long periods of time? You know, if we go back, say, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, what's the differences between humans? Well, you know, we're getting more traits of extrasensory perception, capabilities that are coming through, telepathy is booming at the moment compared to where it was 10 years ago. We are human sapien point two being upgraded by the sounds of it, which makes it like, well, right, okay, so we're a bit of a science lab. They're the caretakers. They've been watching us and looking after us in some ways, not always beneficial to us because they like to do things and have agendas and stuff. Some's good, some isn't. And then we talk about the mass. It's presented because you've got certain cultures around the world which would never seen a grey. Oh, but they experienced the phenomena, but they've never seen the grey. Well, why have they never seen the grey? It's interesting, they've got no internet in some of these countries, and they don't, I mean, why is the alien grey so prominent now, latched onto so more? Where's all the space brothers gone? You got to consider, isn't it the most prominent
Yeah.
thing? If I say it's a click of a finger, alien, alien, what's the first thought in your mind? And if you think that's the first thought in my mind is an alien grey, that's the first thought in their mind. So I think times change, and now because of the internet's latched on, the alien top of the line is going to be the alien grey, and this is why they tend to be so. I mean, if you go back from 1200 BC to around about, well, it was 700 BC Botswana, these are all reptilians. These are all serpent gods.
Yes.
Botswana, they were going to a cave. There was a serpent being they were worshipping there. It looked like a reptilian, a human reptilian. In Peru and other places. So they've had the time. It doesn't mean it's gone. It's just been placed on the shelf. Okay, what else have we got now? Oh, let's have the Space Brothers. Because we went through all this time where, oh, yes, there were Palladians, we're Venusians. They're all lies, of course.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's an architect. And when they put it on the shelf, there's another one. So as time goes on, if we can get out of the internet hypothesis that, oh, yes, aliens is alien grey, then we might transition onto something else. Because I tell you what, there were hundreds and hundreds of different types of versions of different things. I mean, my first entity, thing that came to my room when I was 7, I'll look through it and I will put it in the bracket of an alien grey, except it wasn't grey. It was certainly my size, and I was 7, so I could kind of work that out. But it was brown and it had wrinkles, but it had the big black eyes. It had the same black eyes, but it was brown and it was wrinkled. And I thought, oh, but you get that, you get these variations. You've got the mold, and then you've got these strange variations. Sometimes long black hair. You talk about the Rua, the school in Zimbabwe.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's just like, well, why would they have long black hair? It just doesn't make any sense. But there are different sizes and sometimes different variations of these things. So if you add it all to a list, you end up with thousands and thousands of variations that this thing seems to operate. But I do find it interesting that when you start to do the research, it's like, are they providing their perception of them by using what we have within us? And if we don't have that something within us, then a new archetype is the variation of the great. Something else is created because we've just not got the alien grey in us. So let's create something, but it's not quite the alien grey. And you end up with this because you tend to find out that. I mean, I loved horses when I was a kid. I was fascinated with horses. But when a white horse's head comes out of a big laurel bush in the corner of my back garden, and I'm stood there as a kid at 9 years of age, thinking, how does a horse fit in that head? I fit in that trunk. When it comes out and it's a white horse's face and it's talking to me, I would say, okay, it's a bit freaky. But the problem is that everything can fall under that banner. And it's like, I had a love for horses. So maybe it was somehow connected with that. I think in some of the things that you've mentioned about your experiences, when you talk about the Cheshire Cat, these are things that aren't real. These are things that have been generated through television or books.
That's right.
Haven't they? They've been generated through the books, and then the movies and those sort of things. When we talk about Noddy, well, that was obviously from a television show, early television show and things like that. But those images of the Noddy is the same images that you've got throughout Ireland with the pointed hats. They're the same faith folk. It's just slightly different.
Mm.
you know. But it's strange how they're all interconnected. And I know you've looked into these sort of things because you must have done, because nobody will come to that conclusion that we don't know.
Yeah.
It's all the above
Mm.
without doing the work. You must have done the work. You must have thought it out to come to that, because it takes a lot to come to that, to be honest.
Yes, and I think most of the time, we are very grounded, very honest, and we have to be open with everything. We don't put ourselves in a corner or an intellectual cul-de-sac. The fairy folk, as you know, and the image of this thing, I was looking to find out where the hell I could see where this thing was, and I found an old UFO book. I can't remember who the artist was or the case. I think it was in Finland, or I think it was two skiers. They came across a small being with a pointed hat, but it had a box
Yep.
on its chest. And I thought, oh my God, that's exactly like I saw, but mine was taller. So I
Yes.
think that on a deeper level, that this intelligence, it is utilizing mythology that we call mythology, or fiction, or the creative parts, to bring them forward, to project them into our reality
From a human point
from
of
a
view,
human point of
because
view.
it has access to us.
Yeah.
I don't believe we've seen the true face of what we're dealing with or what this force is.
Well, we
Right.
don't
Are
know
you
if it
still
we don't know if it does,
experiencing
do we?
this?
We don't know if it has a true face.
That's right.
That's
That's
right.
right.
I mean, what if it doesn't have a face? I mean, and that's why we haven't up with all these different masses. We just don't know, do we, I suppose?
Guys, can I just ask you, are you guys still experiencing this today? And I'd also like to ask you as well, off the back of that, you mentioned about 7 minutes apart you were born, and you mentioned
Yes.
that you experienced your abduction 7 years after.
Yes.
Have you experienced any other synchronicities like that during your encounters?
No, the last one was
No.
9th of April 2016 at precisely the time was 11:15 p.m. at night. That's been documented. That was a big event where there were two events to this, one with my niece and one with us driving back. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it, but three massive spheres had descended and come above us, and they had done this movement.
They were 90 feet up.
And they were, it was incredible. And the road was all, it was a Saturday night. It was cold, clear night. The stars were out.
Pub up the road, no one.
Pub up the road, no one around. And that was the last UFO event.
I've had nothing more.
I do joke with Ronnie and say we're now a couple of old, washed out old has-beens, and that's probably why they're no longer interested.
We've had nothing since then.
One interesting part that is controversial, and I not sure if we're allowed to mention it here, but in the height of the pandemic,
just call it that.
Yeah, I had the injections because we were both to fly to America to talk, and I always had problems with my right ear. And I forgot to say that after my 1989 event, Bonnie tried to take photographs of it with a Polaroid, self-developing Polaroid camera. They wouldn't come out.
No.
But I had these problems with something in my right ear. I've been to the doctor the third time. The day nurse says to me, because the doctor had a look at it, and she said it looks like it's still healing. It has some kind of crystalline structure. The day nurse said to me, "Have you been abducted by aliens?" So anyway, that was weird, and that actually happened, and it was documented. And I just left it. Anyway, when I had the injections, there was a night, it was in the height of the pandemic, lockdown, and there were lights over the house. I'd lost an hour, and whatever it was that's placed in the ear has now gone. It has gone, and I know that
we
it's
had
gone.
red rings around our neck.
Yeah, so
we don't know
whether or not
we don't.
Whether or not they'd come and helped us out on some level, or that whatever that was, if it was what I think it was being removed because it was damaged by whatever was injected into the body. We don't know.
We cannot say. We don't know. But we had red rings around our necks. We didn't know if it's caused by that or.
But that was the last UFO related instance in 2016, and so we, nothing since then on that level. No.
Do any other members of your family experience anything, or have they ever experienced anything?
Yes, and our grandmother was psychic, and also our Uncle Bob, my grandmother's daughter's husband, had and his son-in-law. Now, Uncle Bob, he lived in Caister, and he was a grounded, down-to-earth man. You couldn't even he was grounded,
black and white.
But one night he came back from taking his dog Sam the boxer to the beach, and he saw this UFO coming, cigar-shaped UFO, huge one coming out of the ocean, and then all these lights going into it, and then it shot off, and he came back to the house, and his wife Betty, Auntie Betty, thought he was going to have a heart attack, so they called the doctor. And when he told me and my brother, And I thought, and then,
completely winded.
you know,
I
you're
mean,
joking me,
we were
right?
quite young then.
And
I mean, I couldn't believe it. This man, he wanted to tell us, and so evidently something had shot him. It was a cigar ship, huge. I couldn't get the color or specific details from him. He's sadly gone a long time ago, but yes, he saw one of them.
and my and his daughter, her husband, um, he saw this orb, huge, massive orb, because he's a manager of an oil rig, and he's offshore, and he was he's home, and he worked in the early hours of the morning, and when he was out in the garden, because they got a big property, this light came over the wall and confronted him. Yeah, and it confronted him, and he was so scared he ran upstairs and locked himself in the bathroom. Yeah.
Do you think those sightings are coincidence, or do you think they are connected to your experiences?
Don't know.
The thing is with family, you know, it's the same throughout my family, but it's from my father's side. So my grandmother was psychic, if you want to call it that. My father is an experiencer, but not as much as I am. But what is interesting is that if you can go back to a certain individual in your family, if you're talking genetics now, that they have a profound experience, the perception of that experience can damage the brain. It damages the cortex putamen part of the brain. Cortex putamen is responsible for human perception, and it's damaged because of false perceptions applied to it. In other words, it does damage that part of the brain because it's like false perception. It's been applied by the phenomenon, likely. What's interesting is that it's possibly genetically connected. So if you have a grandfather who has damaged cortex putamen and he has children, it can genetically pass on to your grandparents and to your parents and to your children. There's a genetic offering to this phenomena, in a sense of speaking. In other words, you're already geared. Your blueprint is all ready to experience them right from birth. And that's you don't have to be an experiencer to have that. You've already got it genetically through your lineage of experiences. And that's really interesting because there's some of that new research coming forward now shows that there's a very possible strain here. And this is why we say, why does it run in families? Why does it maybe your grandmother? I talk to people that are experiences and I say, look, I have a joke. I say, I bet the grandmother was psychic. I say, oh, my grandmother was psychic. And it's like, yeah. Well, you know what? When we go back to those times, everything was fallen under a banner of psychic. Psychic. Oh, yeah, I saw a strange thing in the sky, but it's because your grand's psychic. Yeah, it actually covers a lot more than what it was. Just a lot of it was put under that banner, unfortunately. But there's a possible genetic thing now, a trait in us, even when we're born, because of our past lineage of people in our family having these experiences. So we're kind of born ready to experience the phenomenon. We don't. It's not done by change. It's not done by experience. We're already got the blueprint for it, unfortunately. But I think that happens. And, and you talk about your experiences as a children, I mean, was you never taken, would they never thought, well, we need to go and take the lads to see somebody, a specialist?
We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it.
No, the thing is, though, that in those days, it was all very hush-hush and behind closed curtains and doors. You didn't talk about it.
We weren't told not to.
No.
It was just common sense.
Because the world around us scared us, and we were very we were connected together very closely. I had experience back in the cottage because we lived on the grounds of Bignell House that belonged then to Dr. Thomas Gregory, who was a brilliant eye surgeon and his wife. It was a mansion. We lived on the grounds, and some pretty strange things happened there. The smells, sometimes if I smell like old wood, it can sometimes bring back a slight something. But I remembered seeing a grey then and seeing a yellow tractor in a wood as a kid outside.
I have not seen the grey.
So, it's a bit, when you look at these things, it's not because, oh, I'm going to put that in that bracket because it's level of high strangeness. That was there. I think on a deeper level, this whole thing is about us, and I think because you've been touched by its singularity, it opens something more deeper inside you, and it gives you that humility, that humbleness to reach out to that level of immortality, of that reaching out to saying, look, where I am at the moment is okay, but it's not that great. We die. What's going on here? It's like a huge thing that comes in here And that when you're touched by this phenomena, it doesn't make you special. And then you've got people looking at you and they're like, yeah, I don't believe you. And I'm like, hang on just a minute. I want to know one of two things. I want to know whether or not I'm lying or I'm delusional, or the system that we're serving is that.
Yeah,
It's like a curse, isn't it?
Yeah.
it is like a curse sometimes, and it took
Yeah.
me a long time. I mean, if you look at my early podcasts and radio shows and TV parts and things I've done, people always used to ask that question: how did you get into the subject? It's always there, isn't it? You get that probably, Marcus, as well. It's one of the leading questions you always get. And I used to say all the time, oh, well, my father had these books. And he did. I mean, it isn't not true. He did have books, and I was interested in the subject. And I started reading them, and I got it more interested. But the question is why does such a young lad that should be reading comics is reading his dad's books on UFOs? And that's because I'm an experiencer. But I didn't say that. I didn't tell him that. And it got to a point, maybe only about, you'll see the switch over maybe 5, 6 years ago. I just said, I've had it. I'm done. And people, I just said it one day. I said, oh, it's because I'm an experiencer. Oh, right. Well, I never used to say that because being an investigative researcher, you think to yourself, well, people might think you're biased. I'm going to link
Yes, you got it.
and that's the problem. I don't,
Yeah.
and I think it's the other way around. I think, well, you know what? I really, truly understand when people have these experiences because I've had some of these experiences myself. And I know how alarming it is. I know how scary it is. I know how problematic it is. So that's a good thing as far as I can identify with the people who I'm talking with. And you know what? I just took cuffs off and I said, no, do you know what? I'm an experiencer. And since then, I've said it, and I'm glad I did. But you know what? You do get these people saying, well, trying to ask me the questions. I haven't got the answers.
No.
I don't know why I'm having these experiences. But for me, the only thing is that the slight differences is that he's not took his foot off the pedal. I was hoping so. They say when you get into teens and your biology changes, your chemistry changes, you start getting into relationships or whatever. You think, oh yeah, all that'll all disappear. No, 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 no. It didn't, and it hasn't done. And I'm still experiencing, even now at my age, the same amount I'm experiencing when I was younger. I don't believe I've had an abduction experience. I've never had a download experience, but boy, do I get a regularity of wonderment coming into my world, and those in my circle will experience it. They become an experience. If they're in my circle, it's like a virus. You're standing too close to me, you're going to get it as well. It just seems to be a bit like that, and that's been through my life. But I think it's certain individuals that are, and I don't know, there's no answers. Nobody out there is going to try and figure it out. They won't do because we're nearer to even knowing what they know, because we've had certain experiences that we've had. We're in a better position to be able to say, well, we think it's this, because they've never had that experience. They can ponder as much, but they're only working from in the box. They're all working from the same box of instruments. And the problem is the phenomena doesn't lie in this box. It lies well out of that box. So, they'll never get there. I understand that.
I think as well too, when you get people who armchair or keyboard warriors that will tell you what it is that you have seen and experienced, and when you have been out there doing your own field research, which we both have many years ago, and you see something and they're telling you, and you're like, hang on just a minute, just a moment here. You were there, you're in the front line. It's very different for you sitting back and giving your opinion about what's going on. So it's a tiresome exercise.
That will always happen.
Yeah,
we have got no idea. But
I see it. I see you guys. I see it happening, across social media, and I just think, guys, shake your head, shut it off, and just think it's a shame for those people, because at some point, like you do, you walk, you might go mundane things, you go shopping. And then suddenly you stood there and you're looking around a whole supermarket of people and you think to yourself, the people have really no idea about the world we live in.
That's right.
And it isolates you. I mean, I've even come to the point where I just want to not be listed as human, to be honest, because I just disgusted the way humanity's become.
Yes, agreed.
I want to disassociate. I feel a disassociation. People are run differently than I do. I run by emotions. you know,
Yes.
and that's why sometimes the littlest bump in the road is like a stake to the heart, you know. It's
Mm.
and this is it. I wear it on my you know, I wear it on my cuffs, and that is what makes us vulnerable because
Yes.
of the sincerity. And I see it when people don't know it and people don't understand it or even are scared about it, they lash out. Instead of trying to
Mm.
sit down and try and understand something, it's like, I know I'm right, but you're not an expert. So, well, I think it's this. Well, I don't even know what it is. You know, how you can tell
Mm.
me. You know, there's no people that there are no experts in this field.
No, none.
Absolutely. And if there was, it'll only be the first top row is going to be the people who have had the experiences because that's
Yeah.
what knowledge is, isn't it? Through experience.
Yes, and when people put words in your mouth or words on paper and saying you're an expert when you're not, especially with the media cartel, and it's not like that. So, but one of the things is, which is fascinating, is that this phenomena is real. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it's coming from. Overall, I want to know the truth about what we are, the truth of our origins, our creators or ultimate creator. And I think you're reaching out for more of an understanding that you don't want to go against it. You want to understand it,
Mm.
because, and I agree, Steve, Ronnie and I are on your page as well with Marcus. You go out the same with us. I promise, I swear to God, people are different. They're like, a lot of them, dare I say it, are like savages. They just, there's no wanting for that intellectualism, that
Yeah.
that truth, that working towards, the real truth of what it all is. This wheel is going round. And to be honest, when I get onto the other side again, I'm going to say, first of all, I want a refund, and please don't send me back there. What on earth underscore was that all about?
I'll be heading straight for the
Oh
bar, I
my
will.
God.
Straight
It's
for the bar.
it's exhausting, isn't it?
It
But it's
really,
fascinating
really
at the
is.
same token because the phenomena, when like you and Marcus, me and Ronnie, and many other good, wonderful souls have been touched by it, it changes you. It's like, oh no, I don't feel part of this world anymore, and it doesn't make me
It
better.
does. I just
You're
think
woken.
it's, yeah, I think you that's it. You are. I mean, to this phenomena, to the phenomena or these
Yeah,
phenomena, it's
yeah,
all one thing as far as I like to say it's all one thing, but people try to keep splitting it up.
yeah.
But they'll get there eventually because I know that it's all related, and when we keep chipping away at the block, and people are starting to get there. There are some physicists and academics coming forward now and saying, "Oh, yes, we believe it's all sort of connected." And this, "Oh, well, thank you. Where have you been for the last
Mm,
10, 15 years?"
mm.
And they're making these claims, and you think to yourself, "God, we're light years ahead." It's surprising that the people who are experiencers are usually light years ahead because every day goes by and it's there, it's implanted within us. It's not just something that, oh, do you know what, I might pick it up and start working on it occasionally. No, it's part of your life, it's there all
That's
the
right.
time. If you're constantly chipping away at the block to the point where you rule out things, or you come to new discoveries. Sometimes there are new things that are coming along and you think to yourself, yeah, it's expanded consciousness, and some people who have these experiences have expanded consciousness.
Mhm.
And when you do have that, you do look back at yourself and others and you think, okay, how much have I transitioned? Because you've transitioned, you won't notice the transition because it's just life.
Mm,
But for anybody else, it's like you've transitioned. My parents took me to sit down with a child psychologist when I was 10.
mm,
And I remember, oh, you can calling him in, Mr. and Mrs. Mera, come sit down. Oh, yes, you've got a perfect, fine 10-year-old son. And they're thinking, have I lost it because of all these things I'm
mm,
experiencing?
mm.
Because they're trying to find a rational explanation. But in the world of rationality, which is not in that box that we operate in, it doesn't exist.
No,
So you are always going to get these people which are going to be saying this and doing that and doing
no.
stupid things. But I think they're devised to upset the apple cart.
Mm,
And the problem is no matter how much you'll try, it always will do. Because
mm.
if you are a true experiencer, you feel it. It's a different type of punishment. It's like
Absolutely.
it really is hard hitting. It really, really is. And they don't know.
Mm,
It's like water off a duck's back to them. And that's
mm.
how different they are, you know.
You mentioned about puppets in power and things of that nature. How much do you think that the guys in authority, the guys in power, how much do you think they actually know of the phenomena?
No,
Are they trying to utilize it, or what are
no,
your thoughts?
no. They are expendable puppets. I think, to be honest with you, that they are, brought in with power of money, of gongs, and they're wanting to believe that their version of what they're following through their masters is correct. But I don't think that we have seen the real masters, and this is why I need to state here, like most of the people have their opinions, it's a possibility. The system will not open up on disclosure with the UFO phenomena. Do you know why? Because I think, well, Steve knows why. It's because the public will find that they have been eluded, tricked, because the press, the media put it, oh, this way, but actually the reality of it is far more startling. And they have programmed the public already through conscious dissidence. They're not going to be able to understand it. So they basically tie themselves up in knots. And those puppets are expendable anyway. They're, whatever happens to them, God help them when they finish their sojourn on this planet or this side. But the real masters know. It's possible, it's theoretical to assume that they are still here, but we haven't seen what they are or that. It reminds me of Children of Earth, the Torchwood, was it
Oh,
five
yes.
or six parter, where
Yes.
the aliens were sucking the energy from the children and they wanted the children. And it's like also the Dark Crystal, isn't it? When you saw them, the
Yes.
reptilians sucking the essence out of the kindly folk, the Gelfing, and so a lot of this I think is to do with energy and power control and the spirit. So we're just waiting for the good guys to turn
I
up.
just want to add on that the congressional hearing, the Senate, they're trying to push for disclosure. I know that it is even that has caused controversy beyond belief. The thing is that by the time they actually reach a decision, which is going to be negative, they could just ship the pilots and the wreckage to another aerospace port or wherever it is, and you won't have anything. They'll find nothing. Also, I do believe the powers that be perhaps maybe a little wiser to it, so much so that it poses a danger, something they can't control or they have no power over. So what you do in that situation, you completely nullify it.
You have to. You have to come up with a management process.
Yeah.
And the management process says it's easier to tell another lie than it is to tell the truth. And the problem is that you can go right back to the 1970s. The Citizens Against Ufology movement hearings and stuff. It started back then. Then we had all sorts of different types of hearings. And then right up to the modern ones. I already know it's never going to be. You're never going to get it.
No.
And if there is bits of information, it's going to be kept behind closed doors and skiffs, because anything of worthiness is being stamped with national secrecy. Purposeful. It's a very easy way of getting. Well, somebody sat down and made this law one day and said, "What do we don't want to tell them?" Yeah, well, we can't tell them we don't. We can't tell them we can't tell them, and we can't tell them we won't tell them. So what we do is we'll tell them that it's secret because we can't tell them. and it doesn't work, and it works, and it's a get out clause, and we're still here. But you know what I do? Yeah, I agree. They do have some. They have some wonderful toys now, so they've got stuff up there which we won't be able to recognize between phenomena and theirs. And also that, yeah, they've got some physical stuff, but you know what? I just think that the phenomena just likes to gift. Because it does, it's seemingly like they want to keep us, and we've talked about this, haven't we, Marcus? They want to advance human technology, help us get to the stars, all sorts of different things. But what we're not achieving is spirituality. We're not increasing this.
That's right.
We're just increasing technology, and we end up like them eventually, which are pretty much emotionless, but got this huge tech. And this is what's happening. We're going like this, you see, and it's a problematic thing because everyone's focusing on the technology, but inner selves and spirituality, we've got some catching up to do, and that's one's going faster than the other. But it does seem that they're quite happy to plow a craft into the ground. Oh, there are only 5 biologics on it. We're not bothered about that. It's going to be some good technology for you. It might help you. I just think, you think to yourself, you got these stories and they go back to the ancient times, even Death Valley. Which is thousands and thousands of years ago, where this object comes down, it looks like it's broken down, and you got these guys come out of it and they're looking like they're fixing it, and another one comes down, like they've called the AA rope breakdown service. Well, another one comes down, lands next to them, they come running out, and they're all at it trying to fix it, and then they both fly off together. And there are hundreds of cases like that all over the world. You think, what is this? You mean what? So you're basically trying to tell us they fly the distances of space, which is the worst hazardous thing you could ever think to do. And they come here and parts fall off them, or they blow up, or they fall into the ground. It doesn't, so there's a lot more going on to it on this.
Oh, yes.
But the problem is that they can't tell us, because we have this strange idea that we think that they know a lot more. And to be honest, I don't think they do. I think we're realizing now that they're dealing with things which are metaphysical, beyond parallel realities and multiple whatever, but they're trying to wrap their heads around that. They'll never will, because we can only operate from inside the box. And whilst we're trapped into this reality, this box that we're in, and restricted, we only can give and utilize those things in it, and they're outside it. So they call it magic. This is like, the CIA did, called it strange magic and stuff, because they haven't got a clue. They got, they might know bits and bobs about the techs and stuff, but when it comes to the source, how it operates and where's it coming from and all those things, I listen to a lot of stories, but I don't think they're nowhere near, and that is a massive fear factor, because like Ronnie and Philip said, Marcus, is that the economy, the ecology, your religion, everything is wrapped up in this phenomena, even religion. And this is a big problem, because if we were to suddenly turn around and say, well, your religion's based on this phenomena, did you know that? And it's like, oh, what? No chance. We can't survive just as a species now with the indifferences of religion. So you can understand us never getting that answer.
Yes.
Guys, we're going to have to wrap this up, I'm thinking, soon, because we're approaching that 90-minute mark. But it's been an absolutely fascinating discussion.
I know they've got some books and documentaries and things.
Yeah, we're going to say, tell me a little bit about your research, what stuff you've got coming up, any projects you've got coming up. The floor is yours for the next 30 seconds, a minute or so.
I've got a new book coming out called The Eternal Avatar, which deals with the spirit, incarnation, reincarnation, the gods of old, and basically examining why we got this problem on Earth and about the spirit. And the previous one was Terrestrial Trespassers, about the Greys and these theories around them. Yeah.
Great title is all that.
Yeah.
And I'm building a video game.
You're building a video game.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Tell us a bit more about that, right?
It's top secret.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But it's isometric. So, but yeah.
I've seen 3D renders of numerous characters.
Yeah,
I'm not saying which one, Steve.
But I'm working on another UFO book now, so it goes into deeper territory, because what we're dealing with at the moment is just skimming the surface. With all of us, it's frustrating, so we have to look at it in different angles now. So that's what I'm looking at. So but as I said, I encompass all ideas, all research. It's wonderful.
And are you still doing your podcasts, or are you still?
No, not anymore. No.
It is a bit treacherous waters, can't it? Sometimes.
Oh yes, absolutely. We just tread very lightly. Well, we will walk where angels fear to tread.
We're playing safe.
We're playing safe. We're playing very safe indeed.
Excellent. Excellent, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. It's been absolutely fascinating. And thank you guys for joining us. And make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Make sure you check us out on social media. And of course, check out the Anomaly Project podcast.com for further articles, updates, and information. Until next time, goodbye and take care.